You've seen them on the street. You've definitely seen the price tags. And if you're honest, you've probably wondered how a brand like CFMOTO or Kove can sell a bike that looks that good for thousands less than the competition. The old answer was cheap labor or government handouts, but that's outdated. The real reason European executives are losing sleep isn't about motorcycles at all. The secret weapon crushing the old guard is the Chinese automotive industry. These bike brands aren't just scraping by. They are riding a trillion-dollar wave of car technology, capital, and supply chains that boutique European manufacturers simply can't match. Here is how the car industry accidentally built a motorcycle superpower. The industrial juggernaut. How car tech changed bike manufacturing. To understand why your next bike might be Chinese, you have to look at what's happening with cars. You have giants like Geely, who owns Volvo and Lotus, and BYD taking over the global electric vehicle market. This matters because technology in China doesn't stay in silos. It trickles down. And when it trickles down from a massive car manufacturer to a motorcycle factory, it creates an unfair advantage in three specific areas: electronics, batteries, and metallurgy. Let's start with the electronics, because that's the first thing you notice on the showroom floor. Have you ever wondered why a $5,000 Chinese sport bike comes with a massive, full-color TFT display, Bluetooth connectivity, and tire pressure monitoring, while a Japanese bike costing twice as much gives you a monochrome LCD from 2005? It's not because the Japanese are cheap. It's because the Chinese supply chain is flooded with high-tech components built for millions of electric cars. When a company produces screens for 5 million EV dashboards a year, the unit cost drops to almost nothing. Motorcycle brands like CFMOTO or QJ Motor can dip into that same massive bin of parts. They get top-tier tech for pennies on the dollar. Meanwhile, European brands have to order smaller batches from third-party suppliers at a premium. It's a volume game, and the car market gives Chinese bike makers a cheat code. Then there's the battery advantage. If you look at the rise of electric and hybrid motorcycles, the biggest cost is the power cell. China currently dominates the global battery market through companies like CATL and BYD. Because these massive conglomerates control the raw materials and the manufacturing for the automotive sector, domestic motorcycle startups get priority access and better pricing. While a European startup struggles to source affordable battery packs, a Chinese brand can leverage the local automotive ecosystem to build a bike with better range and power for 30% less. But it's not just about slapping iPads and batteries onto frames. The biggest shift is in the metal itself. For decades, the knock on Chinese bikes was pot metal, poor quality casting that would crack or rust. That changed when the automotive money poured in. Car manufacturers spend billions on R&D for metallurgy and casting precision to meet global crash safety standards. That expertise and those machines are now standard in bike factories. We're seeing high-pressure die casting techniques, originally refined for car chassis production, being used to make motorcycle frames and swing arms. This results in lighter, stronger components that don't suffer from the inconsistencies of the past. They aren't hand-welding tubes in a shed anymore. They are using automated, automotive-grade robotics. The result is a manufacturing base that operates with the financial safety net and technical precision of the car industry. They can afford to fail, iterate, and improve faster than a standalone motorcycle brand ever could. But having the money and the machines is only half the battle. To really dominate, you need the blueprints, and that is where the Europeans accidentally help them out. The master apprentice, flip, joint ventures that backfired on Europe. The most critical turning point in this story wasn't a sudden technological breakthrough from a Chinese lab. It was a series of business deals that seemed smart at the time, but might have cost European manufacturers their future. For years, premium brands looked at China and saw one thing: a cheap workbench. They wanted to lower their production costs to increase margins, so they entered into joint ventures. The logic was simple. The Europeans would provide the blueprints and the strict quality standards, and the Chinese factories would provide the labor and the facility. It worked great for the quarterly reports, but they didn't realize they were essentially running a tuition-free university for their future competitors. Take a hard look at the relationship between KTM and CFMOTO. This is arguably the most successful partnership in modern motorcycling. But look at who is really benefiting now. KTM needed a way to produce their mid-weight engines without the high labor costs of Austria. They partnered with CFMOTO, creating a massive joint factory in Hangzhou. CFMOTO didn't just assemble parts. They were taught how to build the LC8C parallel twin engine, the heart of the 790 Duke and Adventure, from scratch. They learned the metallurgy, the tight tolerances required for high-performance engines, and the quality control processes that keep a high-strung Austrian machine running. The result? CFMOTO now uses that exact same engine platform in their own bikes, like the Ibex 800 and the 800 NK. They legally acquired the engineering DNA of one of the best engines in the world. You can buy a CFMOTO that has the heart of a KTM for thousands less, and the manufacturing quality is nearly identical because it's coming off the same line. Built by the same people, using the same European standards. It's the same story with BMW and Lanzin. For over a decade, Lanzin has been the quiet giant manufacturing engines for BMW, including the parallel twins found in the F850GS and F900 series. To make those engines, Lanzin had to upgrade their entire engineering capability to meet BMW's notoriously strict Bavarian standards. Once they mastered that, they didn't stop at making engines for Germans. They launched their own premium brand, Vogue. If you ride a Vogue today, you aren't riding a knockoff. You are riding a machine built by the same hands that build for BMW, using the engineering discipline paid for by BMW contracts. Then you have the acquisition strategy, best seen with QJ Motor and Benelli. While CFMOTO and Lanzin learned engineering, QJ Motor bought a soul. By acquiring Benelli, a heritage Italian brand, they solved the one problem money usually can't fix: design and heritage. Chinese bikes used to look derivative or awkward, but by purchasing an Italian design center, QJ gained the ability to make bikes that look emotionally compelling. The Benelli TRK 502 didn't just sell well, it became the best-selling motorcycle in Italy, beating out the local heroes like Ducati and Moto Guzzi. This is the Trojan horse effect in full swing. European brands invited these manufacturers into their inner circle to save a few bucks on production. In exchange, they handed over the keys to the castle. They trained Chinese engineers on how to build reliable, high-performance engines and how to design beautiful chassis. The master taught the apprentice everything he knew, assuming the apprentice would always be content working for minimum wage. Instead, the apprentice took those lessons, combined them with that massive automotive capital we talked about earlier, and opened a shop across the street. The engineering gap is effectively closed. The 790 and 800cc platforms powering these new Chinese adventure bikes are proof that the cheap copy era is dead. These engines are legit because they were designed by the best in the business. So they have the money, and thanks to these partnerships, they have the blueprints. But can they actually race? This is where things get really interesting. From commuters to podium finishers, proving performance on the track. For a long time, the biggest insult you could throw at a Chinese motorcycle was that it was just a commuter. It was fine for delivering pizzas at 30 miles an hour, but the prevailing wisdom was that if you took it to a track day or tried to redline it, the engine would likely turn into a grenade. That stereotype kept European CEOs comfortable. They convinced themselves that while China could make cheap engines, they couldn't make fast engines. They lacked the racing pedigree and the decades of data required to win. Well, that comfort zone just evaporated, and the speed at which it happened is terrifying for the establishment. Look at what Kove did at the Dakar Rally. This is the single most grueling motorsport event on the planet. It breaks machines that have millions of dollars of development behind them and leaves riders stranded in the dunes. Kove, a brand that didn't even exist a few years ago, showed up with the 450 Rally. They didn't just show up to take pictures. They sent 3 bikes, and all 3 crossed the finish line. Do you know how insane that is for a rookie manufacturer? Brands like Honda and KTM spent decades refining their rally bikes to get that kind of reliability. Kove did it on their first real try. This proved that Chinese engineering isn't just about copying dimensions, it's about understanding durability under extreme stress. They built a bike that could survive thousands of miles of desert abuse right out of the box, proving that their metallurgy and assembly can take a beating. Then switch over to the tarmac with CFMOTO and Moto3. This is where precision matters most. In Moto 3, you are squeezing every ounce of horsepower out of a tiny engine, running at screaming RPMs for entire races. If your metallurgy is off by a fraction, or your tolerances are loose, you don't finish. CFMOTO isn't just participating, they are fighting at the front, taking podiums and battling giants like Honda. Even though there is platform sharing involved with the Purer Mobility Group, the fact remains that a Chinese logo is on the podium of the World Championship. It sends a clear message. They have mastered the art of the high-performance engine. They aren't scared of the red line anymore. How did they get this fast, this quickly? Again, look at the automotive connection. Developing a high-performance chassis usually requires expensive wind tunnel time and shaker rig testing that small motorcycle brands can barely afford. But because these brands are backed by industrial giants, they have access to state-of-the-art testing facilities that rival Formula One teams. They can simulate years of abuse in a week. They can refine aerodynamics using the same tech used to streamline electric cars for better range. This allows them to skip the 20 years of trial and error that European brands had to go through. They are essentially speed-running the development process using car industry cheat codes. This technical leap has triggered a massive shift in what they actually build. 5 years ago, a big Chinese bike was a 250 cubic centimeter single. Now, we are looking at the Kove 450 SS, a four-cylinder sport bike screaming to 16,000 RPM, producing over 70 horsepower. We see 800cc adventure tourers from CFMOTO and QJ Motor that actually produce competitive horsepower figures, not just good enough numbers. They have graduated from the commuter class to the performance class, and the lap times prove it. Winning races is great. It builds hype. It looks cool on a poster. But for the average rider, a podium finish doesn't mean anything if the bike dissolves in the rain or waits 6 months for a clutch cable. Performance is solved, but trust is earned in the garage. Let's talk about the final hurdle. The final hurdle: reliability, parts, and global domination. So, winning on Sunday is great, but can you ride to work on Monday? This is the final hurdle. And honestly, it's the one that has kept most of you from pulling the trigger: reliability and parts. For years, the horror story was always the same. You buy a cheap bike, a clutch cable snaps, and you spend the next 3 months staring at a motionless lump of metal in your garage because the replacement part is on a slow boat from somewhere you can't pronounce. That fear is valid, but the landscape is shifting faster than you think. First, look at the warranties. Confidence is currency in this industry. If a manufacturer knows their product is junk, they give you a 6-month guarantee and hide. Today, brands like CFMOTO are offering 2-year unlimited mileage warranties that match or even exceed what you get from Austria or Italy. They aren't doing this out of charity. They have the data from their automotive-grade testing facilities proving these engines won't blow up. They are putting their money where their mouth is, forcing you to reconsider the risk. Then there's the dealership network. This is where the automotive logistics muscle really flexes. In the past, importers were sketchy operations working out of warehouses. Now these brands are leveraging established global supply chains. Because they are often tied to massive industrial conglomerates, they can ship replacement parts through the same sophisticated logistics channels used by car manufacturers. We are seeing parts fill rates jump from 50% to over 90% in major markets. They are fixing the supply chain because they can't afford to have a bad reputation anymore. You are now seeing these bikes on the showroom floor, right next to Kawasaki's and Yamaha's, not hidden in the back. The numbers back this up. While traditional Japanese and European sales have been relatively flat or struggling with supply chain issues, Chinese motorcycle exports to Europe and the US have been aggressively climbing. They are capturing the entry and mid-level market simply because they actually have inventory. But the real dagger to the heart of the European establishment is the pricing power play. Thanks to that massive scale of production we talked about earlier, they can undercut European prices by 30 to 40% while offering more stuff. This forces the old guard into a corner they can't innovate their way out of. Walk into a dealership. A BMW F900 GS is an incredible machine. But by the time you add the premium package to get the quick shifter, the heated grips, and the TFT screen, you've added thousands to the price. A comparable Chinese bike often includes the crash bars, the luggage, the tech, and the quick shifter as standard equipment, all for a sticker price that is still thousands less than the base model of the European competitor. It's hard to argue with math. The market share reality is changing because the stigma is fading. The value proposition is just too loud to ignore. The one area where they still lag is resale value. You will lose more money selling a used Chinese bike than a Honda. But for many new riders, the upfront savings are worth that risk. The gap is closing, and the wallet vote is starting to swing east. Conclusion: the New World Order. We need to stop calling these bikes cheap copies. That era is over. What we are seeing today is the result of an automotive industrial revolution that has poured billions into perfecting the motorcycle. European brands are no longer fighting scrappy startups. They are fighting a competitor with deeper pockets, faster factories, and a hunger to win. The only question left is, are you brave enough to put one in your garage? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into the industry.